I remember when the Reverend Wright tapes came out in the Obama election of '08. And Reverend Wright was talking about how, which was frankly not a terribly controversial position, that America's chickens had to come home to roost September 11th. The tapes were old. And the charge was that Barack Obama was sitting in the pews while, Reverend Wright said this. And Obama, I think, said that he wasn't there when this was said. And for some of us who wanted to project onto Obama more ideology than was there, the Reverend Wright thing was sort of great. It was like, oh, well, maybe this guy is great. Now, ultimately, it became very clear to me that, yes, Barack Obama was not sitting in those pews.
He was a community organizer.
Yeah. But hope springs eternal. And here is big-brained Eric Weinstein. You'll recall he is the brother of the equally big-brained and very, very sophisticated multi-level, multi-dimension chess envisioner, Brett Weinstein. Here he is with podcaster Chris Williamson discussing Kamala Harris's phrase of being unburdened by what has been.
Can you please try and explain to me what you interpret by what can be unburdened by what has been? What does that mean?
Is he gonna cry? Oh my God, he is.
I don't know if I should say. There's a line in Marx where sometimes you hear certain phrases like a world to win. AOC uses the phrase, we have a world to win, which comes from the end of the Communist Manifesto, originally written in German. It was the name. I used to hang out in the Revolutionary Bookstore in Cambridge, Massachusetts with the communists because they print everything in every language. So if you're trying to learn multiple languages, they'll print the same text in all of these languages and you can compare.
Interesting.
It basically says you have to wipe out what has been to arrive in the new.
And where's it from? What can be unburdened by what has been?
It's not a direct translation, but it occurs in Karl Marx.
Occurs?
I wasn't expecting this. I could find you the exact reference. If you think about what Mao had to do to wipe out Chinese history, what Pol Pot had to do, you're trying to wipe out memory because the memory has all of this burden. Why is it important to go after doctors and lawyers and teachers and professors?
Who's doing that?
Because in some sense, they are going to resist the new order that you're about to impose.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to let you know, Kamala Harris is a lawyer.
His brother is going after doctors.
Her running mate is a teacher, and her running mate's spouse is also a teacher.
Ron DeSantis.
Her husband is also a lawyer. But sacrifices obviously must be made.
Or is she a Maoist?
Sacrifices must be made.
We've abandoned the lines of Marx.
look, I am probably the one of the last people to comment on what Marx said. But my understanding of Marx is that, in fact, historical context is extremely important to Marxism. That the idea of like getting rid of memory and unburdening ourselves really doesn't have much to do with Marxism at all. I think what he is talking about is, there are moves by authoritarian governments that will come in and say, like, for instance, no mention of the words climate change in any of our documents. I want you to strike them all from the EPA website, for instance. For instance. And we managed to make it through that when Donald Trump did that, or down in Florida, Ron DeSantis did that. But I think and I've been to that bookstore in Cambridge, Mass, or I had years and years ago. And it makes me an expert in nothing and makes me qualified to say nothing about interpreting this unburdened by the past. What I think she's really saying is that, like, we shouldn't let the constraints and the failure of political imagination of what we've had in the past dictate what we attempt in the future.
Well, we can read the full quote in a bit. Or it could be much more sinister. Let's hear more. Or it's the plot of The Giver, where she's essentially trying to write he's literally doing teen dystopia. No, you guys don't remember The Giver? No.
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I just want to zero in. Like this is just a masterclass in charlatanism, because he starts off the pregnant pause. There's a Marx quote, and then he says, "A world to win." There's nothing to do with a world to win by working people that corresponds to destroy everything. Marx himself was like, actually, capitalism is a part of overthrowing these former orders. So that's why he had to move 100 years in the future to Mao all of a sudden.
But her full quote is about being unburdened by what has been and then essentially moving forward, right? It's saying we know that what can happen and what is possible when we collectively have the ability to see what can be unburdened by what has been. After all, right. So she talks about, in the fuller quote, I could get the better one, about how we can build a better tomorrow and be unburdened by what has been while still keeping in context.
Idealism?
And that's when she says the context, that's the other part of the quote of what came before us, which he's leaving out. But it could be a Marxist sleeper phrase, like what AOC is saying. Like, if they each say it in unison, they trigger the robots who are going to come in and take over the government just by, like, you know, in the James Bond movie or a spy movie where you've been brainwashed, and that's what hypnotizes you to take over the country as a Marxist.
This is also, like, this is Weinstein also. I mean, let's be clear what Harris is also probably referencing. We have a history in this country of slavery. We have a history of, and frankly, a present of institutional and systemic racism. And it is quite possible that Harris is saying, we don't need to be defined by this. We can go forward into the future. Now, that may be perceived as like a little bit Pollyannish and whatnot, and I think that's a fair criticism of that. But let's go back to Weinstein. I love the fact that he's like, I don't know if I should say this.
They might come get me if I decode.
They might get me.
Mm. Why is it important to go after doctors and lawyers and teachers and professors? Because in some sense, they are going to resist the new order that you're about to impose. You're looking for a blank slate.
They're like a tether to the past.
Okay, I'm going to tell a story I don't know that I've ever told anyone. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Can't promise it's original to you. But I was in Hoi An in Vietnam. Now, I'm going to lose this one.
Oh my God.
There's a cut there.
Hoi An is one of the only beautiful places that I found, you know, like Hue and Hoi An.
I'm losing it, bro.
A lot of things were really ripped up in that war.
That's
I
it.
think we can keep it going if we want to. But.
And I don't want to watch him, like, you know, fake cry about the horrors that he saw in the wake.
They're so well traveled, the Weinsteins. I mean, Brett and Heather were in Madagascar learning all sorts of sociological facts about cat eating.
I mean, but can Eric, like, at least, if he's going to get choked up and cry about the horrors that this country inflicted on Vietnam, does he have... he's maybe unburdened by what has been because he's not putting that within the context of, like, say, Israel's current genocide in Gaza that we support. He's not that upset about that. In fact, he's the less crazy Weinstein because he said that Israel, the vaccines have to be safe. And you know why? Because Israel would never give their population these vaccines because it's so inherently moral and good. So if the vaccines are harming people, Israel would never do such a thing. That's the kind of intellectual rigor that he works backwards from. A country having an innate morality, and then everything else is just a branch off of that ideology. Sophisticated thought here.
Let's let's keep in mind that Brett Weinstein is the accomplished academic in the family, having been a professor for a certain period of time and
very short period of time where he didn't publish a whole lot, but okay.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm talking, it's all on a curve within the context of the family. Eric Weinstein self-published something about coming up with, what was it? So the string theory or some type of
geometric unity, and that was also not in a peer-reviewed publication, but on his pay-for Discord server, I believe.
We should also say that was, despite the fact that it was behind a paywall, a lot of people found it and were able to completely rip it apart and say, you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Sam, I'm surprised you don't see the ways of the distributed idea suppression complex that is responsible for poo-pooing that idea. That's exactly why he didn't release it to the public.
Yes, because it would be criticized in a way that would be completely unfair. Now, here's a guy who's worried about Kamala Harris saying you can be unburdened by the things in the past. But let's check in with Eric Weinstein's and J.D. Vance's former boss. Eric Weinstein, I think he still works for him, right?
Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel. If you're really worried about the demise of democracy and the idea of authoritarianism, maybe you should check out what your boss has been saying. This is from back in April. And again, remember, J.D. Vance suckled at this guy's in his entire professional career, suckled off the teat of Peter Thiel, and Peter Thiel has provided him tens of millions of dollars to run for political office. Tens of millions of dollars. That is not an exaggeration. And here is Peter Thiel with just some of a flavor of some of his ideas about government and where we're at.
Where they dwelled too deep, and finally they awakened the nameless terror of the Balrog. But I think there are, and again, I don't think we're ever in a cyclical world, but there are certainly certain parallels in the U.S. in the 2020s to Germany in the 1920s, where liberalism is exhausted. One suspects that democracy, whatever that means, is exhausted, and we have to ask some questions very far outside the Overton window.
What is it you think that Schmidt missed that's very important?
Let's maybe I'll just sort of do one insight that I think is powerful, and then sort of what's wrong about that. One of his books was The Concept of the Political, and sort of what defines politics. And
I don't think we need any more after that, frankly. We need to ask some questions now that democracy is tired outside the Overton window. Do you think he's proposing what? What do you think he's proposing? We know in the past he said the problem with democracy or the problem with expanding the vote, particularly to women.
People like Emma over here.
Emma with their votes.
That's creating democracy.
You start to create and expand democracy, and then the problem becomes socialism. So I don't think Peter Thiel is out there saying we need to expand the Overton window into what we're talking about in terms of system. I don't think he wants to expand it into socialism.
No.
And this is a guy who is literally full on praising or seeing an opportunity in an era that is reminiscent of the rise of Hitler in Germany, and saying, I think it's time we start to ask some questions outside the Overton window to try and find a solution to this problem that apparently he has with democracy in our society.
And he says liberalism there as well, where when we talk about liberalism, our criticisms are like the free market liberalism and the idea that we should have
in the capitalist
corporations, capitalist neoliberalism. Basically, that's the most efficient way to run a society, to make those companies profitable. Those are our criticisms. His criticisms of liberalism are social liberalism. And that's what should be very scary, is because he's in the past said that it was a mistake to expand the franchise, to women and things like that.
Yeah, this is a guy who is a full-on Straussian, who is very excited at the prospect of maybe an authoritarian regime in this country, and that's the only way to deal with stuff.
Yeah, people get Peter Thiel misunderstood when they think he's like a businessman that is just like trying to throw his weight around in politics. No, he is a right-wing chud who published a book against diversity. He has got an ideology. He published a book in the 90s talking about how like it was woke to like Cesar Chavez and stuff. And then he made it big in PayPal. And if I made it big and was a billionaire, I would be doing a lot of left-wing stuff with my money too. That's what he's doing.
Right.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.